Record. Okay, episode 2, take 1,
The indoor version.
first diffusion. All right, we are timed. Let me get my headset on. How do we sound? Oh, yeah. This looks good. Okay. Welcome to Quantum Kinetics Corporation First Diffusion Podcast, Episode 2. I'm here with
Randall Bird, the COO and president of Quantum Kinetics Corporation, and we are back inside.
It Feels Good. It's nice in here.
It is, and it's nice in, and we'll stay in for a while.
Well, we're going to be here talking about what? Nuclear fusion, first diffusion?
We are. We've got a little bit of peer-reviewed material to cover with you, and we're going to share a little bit because we had gone and done in the national lab everything that it would take for us to verify our research and what we are producing, and we have that report. We're happy to report it has been peer-reviewed, and you want to tell us a little bit more about our Nature and so forth article.
Absolutely. So just historical context about quantum kinetics. In 2022, we did a study with the National Lab Department of Energy for electrolysis, essentially with seawater and well water. And what we discovered with our safe nuclear technology with the quantum kinetic fuser device, which is in the back, we found that we were able to isotope manipulate deuterium and also hydrogen ions, and also we were able to transmutate oxygen isotopes as well. And we found new elements in there. And that was our first peer-reviewed study with Nature magazine. We got published with high review. And then after that, we were like, hey, actually it was the Department of Energy was like, hey, we should try to put in deuterium oxide in your water and see what happens, not just well water or seawater. And we agreed. We agreed to do that. And then we did a deuterium oxide experiment. And man, it was awesome. And then we wrote that up and we tried to submit it back to Nature because they were super excited about our first study. And we basically got the door closed right on our nose. It was like, what? Okay.
So what was the change in that? Everybody's probably a little curious. There was a shift of some kind. What took place?
Well, we don't really know what the shift was. We can't definitively say because we don't have enough evidence. But we submitted our research of the deuterium oxide to Nature Chemistry, Nature Communications, Nature Clean Water. We submitted everywhere we could. And every single one of them was like, go away. We don't want to talk to you anymore. So we don't know what happened there because we were so excited about our technology. We're like, we want to show the world. But what we did was in 24, we reached out to a company, which I can't name the company because we're under an NDA, but they're the global isotope company of the world, essentially. And they agreed to do a study with us with radioactive wastewater.
Yeah, and I was along for that trip along with my wife. We were there. We met with the physicists. We got through all of the steps that it takes to, one by one, go through setup, verification through the scientific process of how we conducted our experiments, how they were handled and shipped off to an independent lab for verification, and then the results that we received. And what were some of those results? Let's talk about a couple of the pieces that were key to us getting even more excited and really stiffening our stance to make sure we are claiming first diffusion.
That's a really good question because we actually did 2 studies with them. We did one in 2023, and then we did another one in 2024. And the results on the first one in 2023 were so amazing that we were like, we got to do it again because that was insane. And so we did it with you, Randall, in 2024 with your wife, and we found out that so just rolling back, we actually put we put in uranium concentrate, we put in strontium concentrate, and we put in cesium concentrate on the second test that you were at.
Yeah.
And we found barium in the water afterwards, which barium can only come from a beta decay of cesium-137. So it showed up, and then the uranium dropped by 80%, and then we found tungsten, thorium, and lead in the reactor water post-treatment. So all indications show us from our good observation of science is that our transmutation emissions matched up perfect with the isotopes that were in the treated water.
And that's incredible. So these are characteristic emissions that come from KEV. And we've talked about KEV, and you're going to hear a little bit more about it as we go through each of these episodes, because there are some definite connections between what we once coined the Easy Bake Oven and the effects of our power on our modulation for our particle oscillations as an energy generator. And so this is the key, the secret is working within this KEV and this spectrum. So can you take us through a little bit of the spectrum meaning and relation to electronic capture?
You're getting so good at this, Randall. Like, you're becoming almost like scientifically, like, accurately stating perfectly all these things. And you can only do that through experience and being around it a lot.
And being around it a lot. Yes, sir.
So this is really exciting that people are starting to pick it up. And so in terms of the KEV, which is the emission that we saw out there with the arc reactor.
So what is KEV?
Let's
First element is just assume nobody knows, and we'll start there. How's that?
Perfect. Thank you for reining me in. I like to jump ahead a little bit. So KEV is kiloelectron volt photonic energy. So if you have like visible light, for example, has a KEV or a electron volt potential. An X-ray has way more energy, like exponentially more energy than a visible light, like from this light right here or light from here. This is like 1 electron volt to like 3 electron volts that are coming out of here. Right? Very low energy relativistically. An X-ray is like past ultraviolet, which is like way up there towards like gamma radiation and stuff like that. Massive amount of energy. And what we talked about degrees of freedom while we're outside is the degrees of freedom change the atom ever so slightly depending on the electron volt potential. So X-rays do this really funky thing where they knock off electrons. So if an X-ray hits you, it knocks off one of your electrons.
Okay, so one of the things that we understand, and everybody has to go through at one time or another, in all likelihood, an X-ray at an X-ray machine to do something for a medical diagnostic or along that line. So can you tell us a little bit about X-rays in that context, how that relates to something of what we're talking about?
Yeah, so when an X-ray hits you, or even hits a piece of metal, usually it'll just knock off an electron. And this is called the photoelectric effect. So when blue light, which is really high visible light, has enough energy to move electrons in metal, this is a photoelectric effect, which was actually a Nobel Prize winning concept. But then there was this thing called Roentgen rays. Basically, it's an X-ray. X-rays have way more energy, and they actually penetrate basically through you, and then they scatter electrons as they pass through you. Mm-hmm. And that's flesh. But bones absorb a lot of that X-ray radiation. And so that's why you get the image, like the X-ray image is like you can see the bones.
Sure, that density comes through as that white part of the image, correct?
Absolutely, and that's what we use X-rays for. Now, there's another fancy thing you can use X-rays for, which is transmutation.
Ooh, tell me more.
And so when an X-ray hits you, it knocks your electron off and then causes this thing called potentially electron capture. And here's a nice little graph of electron capture. So when an electron gets hit by an X-ray, it'll shoot the electron off, but then there's a missing void here. And sometimes there's a missing void in the inner shell, and there's this thing called the Auger effect, which is AUGER, and it's a French thing. But what happens is when there's a missing electron inside from the X-ray hitting it, it'll actually pull an electron from the upper shell down in to fill the void, and that emits X-rays. It'll actually emit the atom will emit X-rays as a byproduct, which is what you see when the arc reactor is running, those emission spectrums.
Right, so nature abhors a vacuum, and this creates something equivalent to that, and that replenishment is the action taking place, correct? The particle oscillation.
Correct. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. But in our process with Safe Nuclear Arc Reactor Fusion on Demand is we create a well, the quantum kinetic well. And as the electrons are being sucked in by our reactors, all the dielectric, the air, the water, even the vacuum of space has to renormalize to that void. Mother Nature hates a void, and she will fill it in at all costs. And you can use that to your advantage when you're designing your devices.
That's right. So that leads into a little bit of this electrical energy input and thermal temp readings that we were getting. And yesterday, or during the experiment that we did outside, we had this thermal temp reading that came through in these KEVs that gave us a reflection of the activity in the arc reactor. Can you tell us a little bit more about those degrees of freedom with RF signals? Because this is really kind of a conduit conversation to bring this into the light for everybody.
Yes, and oh man, that was such a good question, because RF stands for radio frequency. And radio frequency can be from radio to microwave to visible light to infrared, which is thermal. It can be the whole spectrum of the EMF band.
Mm-hmm.
And so our reactors, the arc reactor, the quantum kinetic well phenomenon, it actually emits multiple frequencies. It emits a radio wave, it emits a small microwave, but the main thing that it releases is X-rays. Because what happens, what we talked about earlier, the Auger effect, the Compton scattering effect, all these different effects occur as Mother Nature is trying to renormalize herself to this transmutation going on in our reactors. So we do it at such a low power that most people in the hot fusion industry are like, how do they do that? They must be joking. Well, no, we're not.
Yeah, so this is part of the dispelling. This is probably a moment. How do we dispel the notion that we're not actually true with what we're saying and what producing what we've come up with? This is a moment of kind of definition. Take us over the hump of disbelief for anybody who's still out there cannot get their head around this sizable of a shift, this paradigm shift, literally, for what's about to take place in fusion as we ascend into the top spot, because we are the only ones still that have this cold fusion technique. Can you help us out with that?
It's a really good question, and the only thing I can tell you is that a good scientist, their number one job is to look at data, observe the data, make assessments of the data, and then report on the data. And we've been doing research, Randall, for, like 5.5 years now, almost 6 years. And we've spent so much money on doing this. And all the data suggests, every single experiment, we're doing the X-rays, we're doing the transmutation, we're doing it with things like uranium, which are like almost impossible to break down. We're seeing new signs of like atomic spallation that is induced with low power, which is basically Nobel Prize material. Like we can now clean radioactive waste remediation at low power and economic, and we can treat Pasco's river water. We can treat any water you want, poisoned water, tritiated water, you name it. So the implications of this technology are only limited to the imagination. And we say it all the time, but the more you say something, the more it begins to sink in, because this is such an unbelievable tech, Randall, that like at first we were like, did it really just do that? We better test it again.
Right. So also this takes us into the fact finding of this to sediment buildup on the reactor electrodes. And the post-experiment, we did find gamma, alpha, beta radiation, and evidence of this. We know for a fact, based on the results of what we found. Tell us a little bit about this finding and how this pertains to extrapolation into our evidence for this claim we're making.
That is a really good segue into what's actually happening, not just on the outside of like the X-ray emissions and then transmutation of the dielectric, but what's actually happening on the electrode surfaces, which is really good that we talk about this, because what we found is that when we pull the electrodes out and we set them on the table and we send them off to a lab to be analyzed for the alpha spec, which comes from uranium, the gamma spec that also comes from uranium and cesium and all that stuff, and the beta, which is basically just X-rays. what we found is that the electrodes, once they're in the water, the radioactive wastewater, and we treat it, we pull it out when we put it on the table and have it analyzed. You're not going to believe this, but the electrodes have background levels, alpha particles and gamma particles, radiation. And there's only a little bit of beta, which means that it's still ringing X-rays, just very, like, basically it's like when you ring a bell and it just keeps ringing for a certain amount of time.
Right.
The electrodes are still
resonance, yeah.
They're resonant. The electrodes are still, and the sediment on there is still resonating and trying to find balance. Like it's still, but the thing about it is the alpha particles are gone, their background level, and the gamma, which are the ones that are actually quite bad for you, because when an alpha particle hits you, it's helium, and that's not good. But to go on what is actually on the electrode, sediment on the electrode, we found that it is a crystal, carbon crystal, hematite, magnetite Fe3O4. It's a CFe3O4 or Fe2O3. That's hematite and magnetite. Hematite is fertilizer that you can put in the ground to make plants grow better. And when the crystal goes around the radioactive waste that hasn't been fully neutralized or transmutated, it's like a diamond that goes around it. Mm-hmm. This is also something that they're trying to do at Hanford called vitrification. And vitrification is where you take glass and you get it to molten hot temperatures, and then you pour the radioactive sludge into it.
Encasement.
And it encases it. Now, the problem with that is when you pour the sludge into, a really hot crucible of like silicon molten heat, what's the first thing that happens?
It melts.
And when it melts, what's it off gas?
Bad stuff.
Radioactive waste.
Yeah. Everything that we're trying to tell you is first on our list of things we want to remediate too. So we're talking to, hopefully the right people are watching and understanding that there's a little bit of a paradigm shift, as we mentioned. So with that, with the results and the remediation and these new elements with like barium and lead and thorium and tungsten, and there are certain parts of this in the findings. Officials made comments, and we have some pieces that we can in turn report to you based on what we learned from the people that had gone through the analysis themselves. Mm-hmm. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so we actually talked to, after the data came in, we did the ICP values, we did the, the gamma, alpha, and beta spec of the electrodes and everything. We had a conversation over the phone with the head globalist of this isotope company. And when we showed him the data and talked to him about everything, and by the way, this person has been in radioactive waste
30 years. It's his career.
It was his career, okay?
Right,
and
right.
so, like, he knows the industry. He knows everything that needs to be known. And he looked at his data with us, and he said, dude, you have nuclear fusion. You took cesium and turned it into barium. You took uranium and turned it into lead, tungsten, and all these other elements too.
Right.
Thorium.
Right.
And there's only one way to do that, and that's with a room temperature nuclear reaction.
And that's the part people cannot still get over, the hump of reimagining a concept of change like that. And so it's part of our mission. It's actually kind of the cause. This is what I got into it for. I'm just going to spill a little on myself. So I was retired for a couple of years, and there was an opportunity that came through a mutual friend of ours who told my wife and I about this guy. And I have to be perfectly honest, because anyone who hears about this is going to be a skeptic. I started out definite skeptic. So I meet McCain, and honestly, I had a couple of initial reactions, and one is cold fusion doesn't really do anything. It's a bunch of garbage. So, and then the other part was, besides, this guy is crackers, right? So I kind of got through that because and I'm just going to say it. I'm a spiritual man, so I had a spiritual moment where the Holy Spirit tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You're supposed to become involved with this." And And I kind of bristled at the idea, but I'm going to say it. The answer to that is obedience. And if you understand spiritual matters, whether you're a faith person like me or somebody just in spiritual inclination, you're obedient to those promptings, those nudgings. And I did answer that. And I have to say, it opened my eyes to so many things. This has been an incredible journey. Thank you for letting me come on board and taking the skills and the abilities I have. And, I'm a man that believes that God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. And this is exactly where it's landed. I'm the president and COO. If not, it's not for good looks. So it is for.
Oh, come on.
So this is really for me, the proof that I needed to see as I increase my knowledge and my understanding of everything that has gone on, further cements the truth to me of where we've landed and what we have. I would not be here if this was garbage. So when I think about the hot fusion people, I have put myself, and I've told you a little about my version of this is like a horse race, okay?
Yeah.
And so you're lining the gate up with the horses before the race starts. And the bell goes off and the gate's all open. And what happened? Only one horse is running the correct direction down the track. And so when I think about this, these other 19 horses are well groomed. They have been brushed. They're shiny sheen on them. They are muscular. They are well fed, well bred, and they're standing facing the wrong direction in the stalls. And so the gates opened up and they are not running in the right direction. And so this is, to me, an interesting perspective also, because we're starting to see evidence that the jockeys and the horses are realizing we're not facing the right way. And there's some evidence of that starting to materialize.
Yeah, there's actually quite a bit of evidence to suggest that. And I'm going to be totally honest with you, like, it's a major compliment actually to see the hot fusion industry folks starting to kind of directionally change towards where we're going. And we're so excited to see that there actually is a change, because we've been watching the hot fusion industry for over 10 years before this moment. And it's been the status quo, keep it the same, continuous flow to energy, continuous mode energy. Well,
and continuous cash influx to do basically the same thing.
And again, that's okay, because it does take money to do everything. I mean, this is the real world. We're on planet Earth, we're humans, we run on capitalism and all that stuff. Like, without money, it doesn't go anywhere. And everyone knows that. Even our competitors know that. But it's a major, awesome experience for us to see that our competitors are finally waking up and going, oh, that definitely looks like fusion. We're not going to say it is fusion, but we're going to start posturing. And we're okay with that, because you know why that we're okay with that is because that means it's getting better, not just for us and them, it's getting better for everyone, because we are getting closer. As a society on planet Earth, we're getting closer and closer to real fusion every day.
And so you talk about it as the truth, and what does the truth do?
Sets you free.
Absolutely. So we're going to take this and not stop telling you about it, because if it weren't true, we'd give up, we'd go home, and we'd go back to day jobs or retirement or whatever our lives consisted of before.
Being homeless.
But this has been a journey, and I have to say, thank you for allowing me to come on board for this ride. Yeah. I say it again. Yeah. It's been
it's an honor to have you.
It's an honor, and it's also just been incredible to see the places we've been, the people we're meeting, the kinds of things that are elevating us to where we're over 150,000 now on our YouTube subscribers.
Thank you
so much. And that's also a little segue to invite our YouTube subscribers to submit to us now that we've taken that last survey and answered many of the questions, hopefully to your satisfaction. And if not, obviously give us some feedback on that. But we would love to hear from you again in light of where we've taken this and what we've shared with you. What else would you like to know? We certainly have plenty on our docket to share, but this is for you, and we really want you to be able to help drive and formulate this. So please, get on your horse and speaking of metaphors, and give us a little shout out and tell us what you're thinking.
Yeah, and to go on that, Randall, is that thank you so much for all your emails, and thank you so much for your comments. And we can't do this alone. Like, I think we mentioned this on the first episode, is that this technology is really for everyone. And this is not for just a special certain group of people that are, have the tech and that's it. No, this is everyone's tech, and this is the planet Earth's tech. This is the universe's technology. And I've said it a million times, I'll keep saying it a million times, that fusion is love and love is fusion. You don't have to force this. It just happens. And once you learn that Mother Nature, your heart, it's so funny that in Tony Stark's movie, Iron Man, that, the proof that Tony Stark actually has a heart. It's kind of a joke, actually, in a way, because this device symbolizes the possibility of the human's ability to reach out to the stars and to make Mother Earth better and to make ourselves better. This is not just a hardware piece of technology. There's something innately, fundamentally organic about it.
Yeah, and we're inviting people to come along with this. This is a paradigm shift, as we've said, and are going to repeat. The 20th century, we applaud it. We thank everyone who got us this far to bring us to where we are, but this is a new shifting sand, and we are piloting that right now.
What you just said there, Randall, about all the people that came before this, we are standing on the shoulders of giants, essentially, and this arc reactor has Maxwell's equations in it. This reactor has Oliver Heaviside's telegraph equations in it. This has Faraday's law. It has Ampere's law. It has the photoelectric effect. It even has Philo Farnsworth technology in it. For the television tube, and it has like Tesla's technology for the radio. Every single piece of technology that has come in the last 110 years is intimately embedded into this piece of technology. And that's why when you look at this thing, when you're a kid, you say, man, there's something about that little device there that it means something. It's important. And you're right. Your intuition is right. But it just happened to be that I locked myself in a garage for 7 years and then figured out the answer, and now I patented it and gave it to Quantum Kinetics, and we're ready to rock and roll. But what I'm trying to say is that thank you, everyone who's ever struggled, who's ever worked hard that never got appreciated. Thank you so very much for doing what you did, because all I did was follow the breadcrumbs all the way through, and then I just took the next step. And that's what this is.
And I walked in faith. I've been able to contribute, and I'm staying in it. I'm in it to win it with you, brother.
Let's do this.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Remember, click, like, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your enemies, share with everybody. And we're appreciative of you, and we will look forward to seeing you in our next episode upcoming.
Yes, episode number 3. This is going to be really exciting, and thanks for coming along for the journey, and we'll see you on the next one.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.